Hi, Dr. Dara, Truth with Dr. Dara, and here we are. It is time for us to talk about dieting, or me pick up things that are dropping. So here we go. Tonight, I keep calling it dieting because I think it has the word die in it, and I find it really comical that all these years there's been this word called dieting and the first three letters are die, and every time I say the word dieting it makes my face crinkle up and wrinkle, and it makes my insides just kind of turn and get really tight. So I see some of you are jumping on Facebook, Allison, Madi, Kirsten, and there's a few of you on Instagram, and I never know who people are on Instagram because they have all these cute little names. I am Dr. Dara, and people ask me all the time, where do I work? Where am I from? Because it's on social media and YouTube, and there's people all over the world. I'm in South Florida, and I'm a clinical psychologist. I feel like I should have another name besides a psychologist, because I also think, like the word diet, when you say that you're a psychologist, people get really tense and really intense, and they think that you're so serious, and they have no idea what's going to come out of you. They think that I am examining their head while I'm talking to them and conceptualizing everything that they're saying. So note to anybody who thinks that's true, it's not. Psychologists are just as self-conscious as anybody else, and they're too busy thinking of themselves than to just be completely checking you out. So that's just a side note. So some of you are jumping on, and tonight we're talking about dieting. Debbie, look at you over here on Instagram. So dieting, what do you guys think? Because I got some awesome feedback this week, what people thought. I mean, it's been coming nonstop, and everybody has different ideas around dieting and different ideas around food, and the bottom line is what works for one person does not work for another. And I made a comment saying that I've lost and gained enough weight to equal a baby elephant. Well, that's not completely correct. It's a little bit exaggerated, but I think that's the idea around dieting, is that it's this influx and it's constantly happening, and there's no consistent patterns with it. And I said it before, I'll say it again. So everybody say the word dieting. And when you say it, can you like say it with a straight face? No, because even when I say it, it's like, ooh, it just creates this knot in my stomach. I looked up what the definition is, and the definition even says it's restricting. It says something like, it's the practice of eating food in a regulated and supervised fashion to decrease, maintain, or increase body weight, or to prevent and treat disease, such as diabetes. Yuck, exactly, Debbie, yuck. Jennifer, I see that you're on. Rick, I think a few more went on. If you guys have questions, put them down in the comments and tell me, what are your thoughts around diet besides yuck? Or where have you gotten stuck? Or where does it show up in your life? I don't know who thinks of a diet in a good way, but one of the things I did notice about the comments is some people talk about, well, I can just eat a little bit, and some people talk about, I think the overall is that the key is it being a lifestyle, and it being something that's realistic that you can maintain. Because the biggest problem with diet is it's not a one-size-fits-all, and it's not like you can just open a Shape magazine and then there you have the perfect plan. If diets were that easy, then all of us would walk around looking like Barbie dolls. At the end of the day, the two components of diet or food or anything we do has to do with, number one, mentally. It's mentally how things are in our minds, how they're wired. If you say the word diet to people, it's automatically going to be turned off, and they're going to think it's almost like a life sentence, that it's punishment. So that in itself creates this awful feeling of not wanting to do it. So you've got your emotional or your mental, and the other part is physical. Some people can just eat a little bit. Some people can just follow a food plan and just have one cookie, but not everybody can. So there's also a chemical, physical component that goes behind diets. And I've gotten some other good questions this week. One of the questions I got to Truth with Dr. Dara was around doing, I don't know, Jacqueline, if you're on, was around keto diets. And I know some great people that are nutritionists or who are great trainers or have different programs, and they can definitely advise you and walk you through these different types of food plans. So does keto work? People want to know. Another question I got from an editor, from a writer this week from a magazine, and I'm really excited because I'm going to get to do an interview with her for Oxygen magazine, and she has interest in how different diets affect people just the same, and some of the fads and the trends that are out there. And I'm not going to say that they don't work. I'm just going to say that it has to be fit to you. It has to work for you. It's bio-individuality. What works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. Carlos, I see that you jumped on. Adina, hi, nice to see you. I'm so excited I got to see you this week. Adina did my eyebrows. Do they look good? So the point is with the diet is what is gonna work for you and what is sustainable, because I know that people go into different food plans, but it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick because it's not made for them. It's not made for them. It's not a one size fits all. So you've got to have something that works for you. If you are gonna, use a food plan that you have to eat 6 times a day, but you work as a nurse on a 12-hour shift, that's not gonna work. There's no way that that's gonna cut it. Just like if you're trying to do a food plan that you can't even cook, what are you possibly gonna do? It's not gonna work. I see some comments. Oh, Adina. Adina likes my eyebrows, right? And insulin is insulin resistant, brutal, Christine says. And Mark, oh, hi Mark, nice to see you. You love my hair. I wish I could see yours. I wish I could see you. We're talking about diets, Mark. I feel like you could cue in on this topic and give some input. And like Christina says, insulin resistant is brutal. Exactly. Well, the thing is, if it's torture, you can't keep it sustainable. How can you keep doing something if it doesn't feel like it's good to have done, or it doesn't feel like it resonates with you? I mean, even if you look at it foundationally, people say, well, I'm not going to eat meat anymore, because that could be a diet. I'm not going to eat meat. But if meat is something that you've eaten all the time and you don't have a substantial plan to implement it or to substitute it, how are you going to maintain it? You can't. It's almost impossible. And then people call it what? Falling off the wagon. Or people will say to me, well, I'm just not going to eat carbs anymore. Well, carbs is what fuels our brain. And eventually what most people do is they stop eating carbs, and then the moment that they do eat them, they go wild. They start literally binging on it. And we can talk about diet in capacities. I mean, I mentioned that it's mental and it's also a physical component, but if you're not satiated physically, it's gonna lead to binging. It's gonna lead to overeating. It's gonna lead to making choices that you don't even wanna do. So if you're restricting based on a diet and then you end up eating a bunch of food in the end, then you're gonna end up with the same problem of what you started with. Max says, like me when I drink. Yeah, exactly. A carbitarian, I like that. That's awesome. A carbitarian. Well, if you don't eat carbs, eventually you're going to turn into a eatosaurus a lot, and you're going to eat everything in sight. I call that the Tasmanian devil. When you swear that you're going to go all day long without eating, and you do it and you do it, and then by the end of the day you're opening up the refrigerator and you're rancid. And is rancid the word? No, like maybe just starving, ravishing. And you go and you just eat everything, and it just feels like you want something to feed inside of you. Like anything will work. And if you're eating it in a sustainable way, then it's gonna kick. I mean, it's gonna stay. It's gonna be sustainable. So does keto work? Yeah, of course. For some people, it's gonna work. I know, like I said, some really great people that are doing plans with people, and it is working for them, but they're doing it in a way that's realistic to their lifestyle. And so insulin resistant is something that's going on, and that's what I'm going to be talking about on Monday and how that works. But at the premise of most of these diets or food plans is eating it in a natural way, eating foods that are good to have eaten and foods that are grown from the ground, and eating it in consistent intervals. The questions are, well, should you be eating it fasting for longer periods of time, or should you be eating every 3 hours or every 4 hours? Well, once again, it's trial and error too, because I might be doing something and Max might be doing something, the same exact thing, but it's not working for him, but it might work for me. And that's where you guys have to check in. What is your intention and what's your purpose? And being realistic, because the whole idea of diets is that people want quick, fast results. So what's the first thing that people start doing? They see the scale decreasing, but it's water. First they're losing water, and then they're losing muscle. And the fat's the third thing on the list, and so you're not even achieving what it is that you want. And looking at research is so interesting to me, because often what you'll see is people start losing weight and gaining, but they're losing muscle. So then every time that they're gaining weight again, they're gaining more fat. And muscle is the catalyst. Muscle is the fat burning. So people say to me, well, I don't want to get big and bulky. Getting muscle is from lifting weights, but you have to eat enough to sustain that muscle, and muscle is what's going to burn the fat on your body most optimally. So that's really important when we're talking about food, diet, exercise, but of what's gonna work for you. A friend of mine, Michelle Valdez, she does, Michelle Marie, she does pregnancy, and she helps girls with when they're going through pregnancy and answers questions. And because people think, oh, well, when I'm pregnant, I can just eat whatever I want to eat, and that's not so true. And you can still feel strong and healthy and fit through pregnancy. And so she specializes with that. So if you are looking to have a sustainable and optimal food plan, then you would want to go to somebody who is an expert in it. I think that one of the questions that goes on is people say, well, who's an expert? Because everybody claims to be an expert around food and diet, and that's where you want to research. You want to check out what their credentials are. I know for me, one of the reasons that I became a clinical psychologist is because as a clinical psychologist, if it's in my jurisdiction, that if it's something that 9 out of 10 psychologists or behaviorally would recommend around food or exercise, I can make those recommendations. And I love it because that's what my background is in health and exercise. And my gosh, I even get it personally of what's that like. So people say, well, what about, eating disorders? How does that play into effect with diets? Well, we've talked about that before, and there's components of disordered eating and eating disorders. But right now let's focus on the idea of diet. But I do know that the unhealthy patterns of diets is very much contributing to the disordered eating and therefore eating disorders. I mean, I can tell you some of my most challenging times when I struggled with an eating disorder was on the tail end of me trying to diet. My biggest one was when I competed in a fitness competitions, because it just took me to a whole other extreme. And even for anybody with diets, it's like you push it to the limit and you push it to the limit, and then you push it even farther, and before you know it, you're in an unhealthy zone, but you don't even realize it because you're so fixated and focused on the results that you get lost in the cause or the way that it's going. And that's a really important thing. So if you guys have any questions or comments, go ahead and put it down below. Jordania, I see that you're on, and some others. Willpower, how does that fit in? There's Debbie Clark wrote an awesome book, a kid's book, and she called it Willpower, and she talked about this little boy who went through life, and he was heavy, and it makes me think about willpower. The truth of the matter is that it isn't about willpower, because willpower is in your brain. Like, willpower is not about what's at conscious level. Willpower is what's in unconscious level of how things are. People think, oh, well, if I can just stop myself, if I can just strong arm it. Yeah, some people are going to be able to eat little bits. I mean, I saw some of the comments in the group this week with Truth with Dr. Dara group, and people talked about, well, I can just eat little bits at a time. For some people, that's going to work. For other people, it's not going to. If you have a sensitivity to sugars, if you can't just eat one Oreo, and you know historically that if you eat one, it turns into 10, well, willpower isn't going to do you much good, because there's a physical sensitivity, there's a chemical sensitivity that's going on inside of your body, and that's leading up to the emotional component of it. So even if, think about it, guys, if you have an allergy to bees, no matter how hard you try to stop yourself from a bee sting swelling, it's still gonna swell because of the chemicals in your body. Yeah, we can think about it in a way and see yourself healed and all that stuff, but let's not diminish the fact that there are physical things that happen for people, and it causes a sensitivity. So that's at the foundation is physical, and then you do have the emotional component of how the ideas around food are ingrained in our mind, even when it comes to certain foods. I was joking in the beginning talking about dieting and all the stigma that's associated with it, and how it makes like your sphincter get tight or your muscles in your body get tight just thinking about or talking about a diet. But that's the preconceived, like those are the messages in our unconscious that are already ingrained in it, and often food is seen as a reward. So when you think about dieting or restricting, it feels like punishment. You know, we give children food as reward. I prefer not to. I mean, it's a big pet peeve for me when I take the kids to the doctor and let's just say they give them a shot and the first thing they want to do is give them a treat of a lollipop. I've shared with you the story of my daughter in soccer, and they want to give a reward of a piece of candy at the end. Well, those messages get ingrained, and it kind of like goes into a fight with willpower, because willpower is not just about, I feel like willpower is like strong arming it, like completely just taking it and wrestling the idea and trying to get what it is that you're trying to get done. So I'd like to like invite willpower to just take a step and move out of the way, because if this was about willpower, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Everybody would say, yay, diet, and it really wouldn't even be a diet because they would be sustaining it on a regular basis. Ali says, I just realized my muscles are tightening now, completely subconsciously. Completely. I mean, even talking about this, some of you are probably feeling knots in your stomach. I mean, look at the multi-million-dollar industry that's out there around food. Even in like technology, I feel like just because we're talking about food, you guys are all gonna get little blings of on Facebook, on the ads, on food. So if you see the little Keebler elf after we're done, it's not my fault. It's the Facebook spies that are listening and they channel it in. Like, I'm joking, but I'm kind of really serious that that's what goes on, is that there's all these ideas that get ingrained in our heads, and then you have these, you're like thinking about it, you're like, oh yeah. I mean, what happens when you go to the movies? You go to the movies and you smell popcorn, or you even think about going to the movies and all you want to do is get popcorn, or you walk into a certain store and it has a scent or a flavor, or a restaurant. I say store because you go into the bank and you're smelling cookies. They do that so that you're feeling calm. You go into a furniture store and there's homemade cookie smell going through the whole store because they want you to feel comfortable and soft, and they want to feed you cookies, and they want you to make an emotional choice. They want you to eat the cookie and completely feel emotional. So I invite that we even remove the word die out of our lives, because there's no good for any of us, and it's finding a lifestyle change that's gonna stick and that's gonna work for you. And so again, if you want to talk more specifically around some different kinds of diets, I'm completely open to that. But at the end of it, behind it, is what's going on for somebody emotionally and physically, and what their experiences are and what it's going to look like for them. Also, it's really important to create bridges. I gave an example last week around creating a bridge, how I was feeling really stuck around my writing. I know that has nothing to do with eating, but it seemed really intense for me to have to get up an extra 30 minutes. So it was looking like 4:20 every single day. And it wasn't working. And then all of a sudden I'm talking to my amazing book editor, and she says to me, well, why don't you just try to write one page? Why don't you just do one? And all of a sudden getting up 10-15 minutes earlier felt so doable. It felt so extremely doable. So let's apply that in the same capacity when we're talking about food and diet. Debbie says a choice. Choice gives me power. Yeah, exactly, because if you decide you don't want to, then you don't. And if you decide you want, then okay. Or how about if you make a choice and at least just hold on to it for a couple minutes? Like, if you want that, that's fine. But let's think about if you want it in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, not like I have to have it right now, because that's usually where diet destruction happens, is because we're making impulsive choices. But if you're eating regularly and you're satiated, you're not going to have those same Tasmanian devil type moments where you're ripping into food or having these cravings. And then, like Amy talked about, willpower, where you're blowing willpower out of the water. There's consistent patterns. So there's emotional consistency and physical consistency around the foods that you're eating. And so we want to create bridges. I think that any food plan can be successful for people, but what gets stuck in their way, and I'm not saying like everything is one size fits all, and I'm not saying everything works, but I've seen people be successful in all different ways. I also don't want to say that it doesn't work, but there has to be a bridge. If all of a sudden you're not eating in an optimal way, to just completely uproar your life is may not be the recipe for sustainability and for success. So what is the bridge that you can do? What maybe it looks like, you know what, I'm just gonna have a glass of water, just one glass of water. Everybody can have one glass of water. I'm gonna have one glass of water for X amount of days. And that's what we're looking to do, is to increase it. So let's think of some other bridges, maybe increasing our water content, maybe just adding some vegetables. How about just adding one snack, or adding one meal, or one idea, like I'm gonna eat a green vegetable one time a day. Those are bridges. And then once you get to that bridge, kind of like, I don't just think of it as a bridge, I think of it like little stepping stones. You get to one, then you're getting to the next, and then you're adding on, and the next thing you know, you're doing it, and it feels like it's yours, and you have your own style, and you kind of have your, your diet mojo, but you're really having your food plan mojo, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, eating, what is eating? It's fueling your body and fueling your mind. So let's just get that diet word out that makes our face turn into wrinkles and our stomachs get knotted, and like literally our glutes and our sphincter just like this. And let's talk about it in a way that's fun and create bridges, because that's what's going to change up the way that our mind is thinking about it. And we've got to make it fun. I mean, again, that's what the multi-gazillion dollar industry does, is they create these sensors and they wire messages in with the food. And when that's happening, it is just, it's havoc. Oh, Jerry says, maybe call it menu magic. I like that, Jerry. That's an awesome idea. And I like that you're suggesting that, because then it makes it fun. Debbie's got choices and you have menu magic, and you want to make it something that makes you smile, not just feel like you're punishing yourself in every capacity. And I really do think that's where so many people get stuck. So we want to shift it. We want to make that shift happen, and make sure you guys are on getting my newsletter. You can register for that or sign up on my website, drdara.com, and keep the amazing comments and questions coming in the group Truth with Dr. Dara. Next week, you know what? I don't know what's happening next week. What I know is that I have some vacation planned, and we don't know what we're doing. We have some vacation time. So it is questionable whether we will be hanging out together next week, but I'm gonna try. Maybe I can do it another night. And so maybe a good topic would be to talk about vacation and disconnecting. I don't know. Shoot me some ideas and thoughts, and we will connect again soon. Thank you guys, and I will talk with you soon. Bye-bye.